Which diet out there is best? Do you prefer one way of eating over the other, or a carb-heavy diet, or do you prefer a low-carb way of eating to control your blood sugar and diabetes? Tune in and I will share what way of eating worked the best for my blood sugars and why I refuse to eat any other way. In my 42 years of living with type 1 diabetes, raising 2 type 1 kids and working in the field of diabetes education, I personally tried most diets on the planet. Government food guides, diabetes guidelines in the old days, Atkins, protein power, keto, paleo, Mediterranean, and more recently, vegan. That one didn't last long, let me tell you. Belly couldn't handle it. And the seafood diet, which is basically eat whatever you see. So let's look at my 2 different ways of eating recently and why I stick to one. Keep watching because I'll share what that is. Keep in mind, this is my experience with diabetes and dieting. By no means am I a medical doctor or a dietitian. This is not medical advice. It's just my journey. I simply have a passion for sharing diabetes tips and info that helps me keep my blood sugars in range. I also know that near normal blood sugars makes me feel fantastic, energized, clear-minded, and in a way better mood. Just ask those closest.
His mood and his energy improve significantly. I love being around him all the time.
A few months ago, I switched to a regular carb diet and basically followed Canada's food guidelines for about 6 months in an effort to improve my relationship with food and live a little, let's face it, to pretend to be non-diabetic. I wanted to see yet again, as I've tried many times over the years as a type 1, to see if I could achieve pretty decent numbers eating what everybody else eats. I tried to make decent choices, whole foods, minimal junk food, and minimal fast food or overly processed food. I didn't go nuts and eat whatever the heck I wanted to. But let's go over some of the pros and cons. So some of the pros, more variety, definitely. More convenient, especially when on the run, at work or eating out. Easier prep, sometimes. Like grabbing a sandwich is pretty easy, slap 2 slices of bread together and some meat. Slightly cheaper as well, on average about $6 to $7 a day. Some of the disadvantages, hunger, satiety. I was more hungry on this type of diet. Varying doses of insulin, more extreme drops, and higher levels of insulin cause the body to activate the hunger sensation when not really needed. Cravings. Hard to resist those tempting not so good for you foods like an office donut here and there. I'll just have one bite sort of thing. Really hard to resist. Yo-yo roller coaster blood sugars, as you can see here. Hard to predict and control. I find that eating higher carbs and carb counting in general, there's a greater room for error, often 20 to 30%, which leads to out of range blood sugar levels. Which brings me to my next point. I felt out of control. Food tasted good, but the margin of error was so high. Counting carbs and getting it right was almost impossible. Worsened mood, aches and pains, fatigue, gas, and I also gained about 8.5 pounds. So let's look at my CGM graphs during this diet. The roller coaster was crazy. And so was my mood. My labs before and after. So I decided I couldn't follow this way anymore for the mood impact alone. So I made the switch to my previous way of eating, low carb. Some of the pros on a low carb diet, for me anyways, more vegetables. Yeah, I know, weird, right? But I tended to eat way more vegetables on this diet. Mind you, I eat a lot of salads, but I do enjoy them. I standardize my meals to 3 a day, skipping some of them. Same macros, protein, carb at each one, which is easier to prep. And once the dose required to cover those meals is fine-tuned, requires less thought. Basically, lunch, I take my dose, eat the standard meal, so it's very accurate, matched with the meal I'm eating. And I move about my day. Never hungry, more satisfied, and immediate stabilization in my blood sugars. Check out my CGM, you can't argue with that. More energy, sharper, and in way better moods. Seriously, just ask my loved ones. Felt more in control with less guessing. Fewer highs and less severe low. And I even lost a bit of weight. Normal bowel habits as well. Less eating out and cravings and able to walk past those office donuts. Here's my labs, pre and post. Some of the disadvantages. Limited options, hence my cheat day. Date nights, and I splurge. I eat what I want. Takes a bit more planning for this diet. In the beginning in order to have variety. But with some creativity, you can make some amazing low carb meals. This is why I cook things like low carb lasagna, quiche, and shepherd's pie. Also videos I made. I'm always looking for that delicious low carb meal. The methods I use, which I learned from reading this book, written by Dr. Bernstein, called The Diabetes Solution, I'll throw a link in the description, revolutionized the way I treat my diabetes. For this to work and normalize blood sugars, I must eat 3 standard meals a day, with the same amount of carb, protein at each one. And that can be a bit tedious over long periods of time and considered a con. Pre-bolusing 40 minutes using regular insulin versus rapid is also a bit inconvenient. Well, actually it's a lot inconvenient, but worth it. That meal pattern is perfectly matched with regular insulin. Some find this way of eating hard to stick with. But once you feel the benefits of more energy, predictable near normal non-diabetic blood sugars, and way better moods, which I absolutely love, I can't follow anything else. I've stuck with this way of eating now for almost 6 years, with a few short breaks, but kept my A1Cs in the low 6s most of the time. You can see here where I made the life-saving switch years ago, and here where I went off it for a time. I'm also glad to see that lower carb diets are being more accepted and studied. It's a method used by this group, Type 1 Grid. I'll put a link in the description for the Facebook channel, which I recommend checking out. It's very inspirational as a Type 1. Remember though, this is my experience and what works for me. Definitely not medical or dietary advice. I truly respect everybody's diabetes journey and I'm curious to hear about what works for you. So please leave a comment and I'll definitely respond. I'd like to initiate that back and forth discussion. Thanks for watching. Check out my latest videos here and a couple of my favorite family low carb recipes. Here's to keeping those blood sugars home in the range. Bye for now.